Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Unit 7 discussion. We are pretty much at the end of this quarter, so good job hanging in there. You guys did a great job this quarter. So we are going to be talking about inventory control and storage management today. So talking about different techniques for storage and identifying like the correct way to pull items for case carts and different distribution types, I guess you could say. So your assignments for this week, if you watched last week, I kind of gave you a heads up so you weren't blindsided by the amount of assignments you had because there are a few extras, especially these comprehensive knowledge checks here, the quizzes. So make sure you're getting those in. These are big points. And your workbook is also a good amount of points too this week. So make sure you're also going back and responding to 2 of your peers for full credit. That is the thing I think I take the most points off for, is just not going back. I know between Wednesday and Sunday, sometimes things get crazy and you forget to go back, but make sure you're doing that, okay? Also, just another quick heads up. For next week, your week 8 or unit 8 is a little bit different. You only have to do this one discussion post. It's more of like a summary, I guess, of all that you've learned this quarter. So each of these is talking about, every main topic we've talked about this entire quarter. So just kind of summarize what you learned. You still need to put references, but you do not have to respond to classmates. There's just not enough time to do that. So you're welcome to, but you do not have to. No points will be taken off for not responding to peers, but make sure you're getting this in by Tuesday. So typically your discussions are due on Wednesday. This is due on Tuesday by noon. That gives me enough time to get those graded, and grades will close shortly after. So everything will be wrapped up by then. All right. So let's talk about inventory control. So trays and supplies have been decontaminated, disinfected, reprocessed, and sterilized. Now what? So that is everything we've talked about this entire quarter. Every single step of the way. Now what do we do, right? Well, really, we've kind of talked about some of the storage techniques when I showed you that video last week of like identifying tears and in the wrapping, but there's a lot more that goes into making sure that items are stored properly. So it's very important to make sure you're storing those properly in a way that keeps them sterile so that they obviously can be used for those procedures. Otherwise, everything you've just done, all of those steps that we just mentioned, has been for nothing. So we don't want to negate everything that you've just done just because it wasn't stored properly. So here are some of the considerations you need to have when we're talking about sterile storage areas and even transportation of those items to let's say to the OR. So the first one, the barrier packaging. The packaging has to be packaged in a way that protects it from contamination, but not impenetrable. So not impenetrable to, like, let's say steam for the steam sterilization process. Location is very important. You want to keep your sterile storage away from main traffic areas. And this one, again, I've said it so many times, you keep clean and dirty separate. So your sterile items are stored in a completely different room from decontamination. And then it's near the sterilization cooling area, so you don't have to transfer it very far. Once it's been through the sterilizer and allowed to cool if it was hot or if it has to sit for a few, it's close to that area. That way it can be put away correctly right away. You want to have adequate space. You don't want everything to be just crammed in there, that you can't find anything. So it needs to be like neat and organized. Special considerations with the storage. It can't have any exposure to water. So you don't want pipes running overhead, like water pipes. You have to have a minimum of 4 air exchanges per hour. Make sure you memorize these numbers here. 4 air exchanges per hour. Temperatures between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. 75 is kind of pushing it in my opinion, but you can start to grow bacteria. Anything like it, the higher it goes, the more conducive it is to grow bacteria. Same with humidity. Less than 70%, sometimes it'll be a range like 30 to 70%. Anything too low, but like below 30, you're going to risk static electricity, which could start fires. So you don't want that either. And then anything above 70 is too humid, which could also um, have bacteria grow as well. And adequate lighting, you obviously want to be able to see what you're doing, see what you're finding, and it could be a safety issue. So you're going to hear this term a lot in the field. We talk about event-related sterility. So ARN actually recommends this concept of event-related sterility. So the way things are packaged, they should remain sterile unless something makes them not sterile. That's the concept. It's pretty simple, really. But sometimes I think people forget that it doesn't mean that the item is sterile indefinitely, forever, because often what you'll see is the package integrity will degrade over time. So even though maybe it's an item that never gets used, it's been sitting on the shelf for 15 years. I've seen it happen. And then they pull it out and like, oh, well, look at that. It looks like it's fine. It's still wrapped, no tears in the outer wrapper, but like maybe the tape is starting to be brittle or something like that. I would probably reconsider at that point. I would repackage it, re-sterilize it, because when in doubt, throw it out, right? So the package, the product, the material that it's wrapped in can degrade over time. Sometimes the manufacturer of the wrapping material or packaging material will put a date on it. And in that case, it is no longer sterile. So improper storage conditions, like maybe the temperature or humidity got too much out of range. I've seen entire sterile processing departments that the air conditioning broke and all the items sat in like 85-degree temperature at 80% humidity. Everything has to be reprocessed, re-sterilized. It is a pain for sure because nothing is safe at that point. Things could get condensation inside as well. Okay, some other storage guidelines. Like I said, clean, dry, easily accessible. We have shown you how to lay those packages neatly so they're not bent. Anytime it bends, you risk the tear in the package. Items need to be placed 18 inches below the sprinkler head. Now, obviously, if the sprinkler goes off, it's going to get wet anyway. Okay. There's nothing that can be done about that. That's a fire safety thing. We can't get rid of that. So, but you don't want to just store it under water pipes for the fun of it, if you can avoid it. Always check package integrity when placing the items, even if it just came out of the sterilizer. It's gone through the cooling process and you're now putting it away where it goes. Still check it. Stranger things have happened. Something could have ripped, tear, or tore in the process. So always check those. And then heavy items go on the middle shelf, right where it's easy for you to reach. And then the lighter items on top. That way, you don't drop a heavy item on your head. It's easier for your back. And again, keep clean and dirty separate. So I included this little video because it's been several months now, I think at this point, but I got to go to Ohio State University's medical center. They have a lot of ORs. I don't even remember how many, like 6 main ORs with like 30 ORs each. It's crazy. So they have a lot of traffic, a lot of sterile items that come and go, a lot of decontamination. They have a robotic case cart system, and I thought it was super cool. I'd never seen that. We don't have that in my area. This was about a 2-hour drive from where I live, because my clinical students got to go and tour the facility. So, of course, I had to take pictures and videos. But this right here is one of their case cart robots. It's set by GPS. It knows the search tech is going to put it in where it needs to go, and it just goes. So it's pretty cool. So maybe you get to work in a facility that's large and has one of these cool things. If you do, I think that's pretty cool. but a lot of facilities don't have that. They use just, you have to push the case cart to where it needs to go. All right, so let's briefly talk about record keeping. We've kind of touched on this before, but when we're talking about inventory, we kind of touched more on record keeping with, sterilization loads and that sort of thing. But inventory also has to be kept accounted for. Somebody, usually the manager over the sterile processing department, is responsible for that because it is a huge undertaking. There are two main categories of supplies they keep track of: operational supplies and then patient care supplies. So operational supplies are items that the central sterile processing department needs to function, whether it's, the wrapping material or pens or the printer paper or whatever it is. And then you've got the patient care that are things that are going to be used during patient care. So you could also break it down, I guess, by reusable versus consumables. A reusable item are like your washers, your sterilizers, things that, obviously get constantly used, maybe the trays, whatever. And then consumables are things we've talked about, your wraps being, excuse me, like going green. Like maybe we should figure out ways to reuse those, but they're consumable, they're thrown away, disposable. Detergents, things that have to be reordered pretty quickly. So there's actually a video here on what this particular facility used for their management, their inventory keeping. It also gives you a good overview of how you'll see some sterile processing departments laid out, and notice like how they organize things, how they have stored their items, since that's what we're talking about. So pay attention to those items.
Tracking stations, everything that comes out and then comes into the department has to be tracked via barcode. Now would be a good time for us to talk about stuff like inventory. Inventory is everything you own, and you own everything around here. This is your stuff, okay? Things like sterilizers are your assets. You have purchased them, okay, and they cost a lot of money. Anything that costs a lot of money comes out of your capital budget or makes up capital inventory. Okay, all other things are, well, unless it's real hardware, are non-reusable inventory, and the name escapes me right now, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so we have things that we use over and over again, and things that are, here it is, consumable. Okay, that's a different type of inventory. We have to watch our consumables. We have to buy them in bulk because we use a lot of it, but not too much, so it goes bad. Okay, our inventory is tracked by multiple methods. In this particular case, this is a barcode reader. Okay, another way to track our inventory would be to utilize radio frequency devices, comparable to the stuff that they use in the store to prevent theft. So when the doorbell rings, if you walked out, they forgot to not scan something out on the way at the cashiers, this radio frequency indicator would set off an alarm outside. Well, radio frequency indicators are oftentimes used in hospitals too to provide us with real-time movement of the package. To tell us where it is at what given time. Okay? So that's what we have here. In this particular case, this is barcode. Everything that's supposed to be in the package is indicated on the computer screen. It tells us what's going out, what's coming back in, what's inside the package. All right? Moving further on down, we can see various computer screens that indicate our orders. Now, we have case cards that are being prepared. Right now, we don't have any case cards because they more than likely went out to the operating room. We have a case card here? All right, very good. So we have some case cards. Case card is one of the methods of inventory management and control. We have case cards. We prepare case cards a day in advance. We know who the doctor is going to see, what they're going to operate. We know what they're going to use. We're going to load it up in the cart, and it's going to go up to the operating room. If there are stat orders or immediate orders, they're going to be displayed. We're going to rush them upstairs, also on the cart, not by hand. Okay, and that's how it's going to be. There are other methods of inventory replenishment in different places. Automatic inventory replenishment, and that's basically, if we have what would be the best way? Like in Stop and Shop, every time you scan out a product, it goes against the inventory tracking system that you have in the store. And when it reaches a certain order, automatically it's generated. Okay? Or we can have a exchange card system where we have identical card here and we have an identical card someplace else. And we simply on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, however we do it, we replace the card, one with the other. When we bring it downstairs over here, we restock it. Okay? So that's basically, you know, some of the ways we handle our inventory right over here. All right? Well, I think that's basically it for our trip. The only thing that we didn't talk about, really, would be stuff like endoscopes. All right? We don't have access to endoscopes right now. For that, we have to go to the operating room. But you know what? If we make one more trip down that way, I want to show you something really quick, and then we'll be done.
Okay, so hopefully that gives you a better idea of how inventory is managed. They use the barcode system, he said. I think a lot of facilities anymore use that type of digital barcode system instead of by hand. It's way easier for resupply purposes. Okay, so now let's briefly talk about the surgical case cart and how you go about picking the items. They call it picking a case cart, making sure that everything on that surgeon preference card is full and ready for the procedure, usually for the next day. We try to do these a day in advance.
The preference card. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Picking a case cart and talking about preference cards. Let's do this. Welcome back to another Surgical Tech Tips. Today we are going to be picking a case cart in the sterile supply room. I want to go do a little brief overview again of the preference card itself. We'll do a little walkthrough through this sterile supply room, and we're going to be picking a case card as well. A couple things to note, that is, you know, your hospital, there might be people there that actually pick the case cards for you. If you do have that, awesome. That helps a lot and saves a lot of time. But if you don't, usually either you have to go in the morning and print out your preference cards for your cases for the day and pick your own case cards, in which case this video is for you. Or two, all those preference cards are printed out the night before, and you'll just come into the sterile supply room, find your preference cards, get your case cards ready, and get through your day. So let's get through this. Let's pick a cart. All right, so first thing I want to go over, just a brief little overview over the preference card itself. Up top on the preference card, you're going to have patient name, the surgeon doing the surgery, and the surgery itself. Moving down, you have gloves. These are all open supplies in this section, and these are all hold supplies in this section. Obviously, open supplies, you're opening everything in this section. Hold supplies, you're usually waiting until the surgeon comes into the room to ask him if he needs any of these, and you know, it just depends on whether or not they may need them. Irrigations or solutions they might like to use. Second page, we've got the instrument set that we're going to be using for the case, the suture that we're going to be using for the case, and the dressings that we're going to be using for the case. All of these separate little boxes here are kind of places where you can put notes on the preference card, positioning notes for the nurse, what type of medication they may like to use for like a local anesthetic, how they may like to prep the patient, and any equipment that they might need in the OR, and settings for that equipment as well in any of these boxes. And then just general comments as well. A lot of surgical techs will put extra comments in the comments section as well as to maybe how they like to drape and stuff like that. All right, we are ready. We have our preference card, we have our case cart, and we're ready to pick this case. I did choose a very simple case to make this a little quicker and a little easier. So this is just an excision of a lipoma. So it's really not too in-depth as far as sterile supplies go, but you'll get the basic idea. So to start picking this case, we are basically just going to go right down this list and pick everything in order. The first thing that we have to pick, if you remember from looking at the preference card before, is gloves. So there's two 7 biogels for this surgeon that I'm just going to place right there in those hold bins, and I'm going to get gloves for myself too. I like to wear the 7.5 biogels during the case, but I'll also set up with the 7.5 non-latex. Always set up with a non-latex glove. Let's move on. Next on down the list, we have two items that the nurse is going to use during this case, and that is the ChloraPrep, which is the prep solution for the patient, and the Bovie pad that they will be putting on that thigh. So let's grab a ChloraPrep and our Bovie pad, and I'll just place that right on top of my cart because it's a little easier to get to. Now it looks like the last open general supply that needs to be opened before we move on into drapes is just going to be this 10cc syringe. Pretty much used across the board for injecting local. Okay, now we've got a couple drapes to pick. We've got some 3/4 sheets, a couple packs of towels, and it looks like a basin and a pediatric minor drape. So, I know the 3/4 sheets are right here. I'll just put those right underneath. A couple packs of towels. I'll just place them on top there. And your pediatric minor drape, that is going to be in the next aisle over. Let's go over there. There it is. Nailed it. Now you're probably wondering right now, why isn't there any gowns? Why isn't there a Bovie on there? There's no suction tubing. There's no suction tip. Where is all that stuff coming from? And it's actually coming from this double basin on the preference card. This double basin on the preference card is this is like a giant custom pack. Well, not a giant custom pack. This is our like general minor custom pack. It comes with plastic basins in it, comes with its own Bovie and tip, comes with suction tubing, suction tip. It's got blades already in it, 2 10 blades and a 15 blade. It's got towels, it's got gowns, it's got all that stuff all packed in to this little package here with the table drape all included. Makes it much, much easier. There's one last supply for open. I forgot about it. And it's your hypo. You need that to go with your control syringe. I'm going to grab that. It was right here the whole time. Now I want to take a second to talk about that because I went over to where the needles actually used to be. Our hypos used to be down there, but they did change this a few weeks ago or like a couple months ago, and I'm still not used to it, obviously, because I went back to the same place it was. If you're ever in doubt, and I hope that your hospital is this organized, but if you see this column over here to the left of our items, that column, it looks like a bunch of random letters and numbers, but actually when you do a close-up to all of these different sections in our sterile supply room have those numbers. So if you're ever wondering where a certain item is, you just look at that item location and then look at all the labels on the walls and on the carts themselves, and you'll be able to easily find them. Now, instead of picking the rest of these hold supplies and moving this cart around the whole sterile supply room, as you can see, some of these little halls are pretty narrow, like narrow enough to only fit one cart at a time. So I'm just going to run through here really quick and pick the rest of these hold supplies and toss them in the cart. I'll be right back. that's it for hold items. All right, so that's it for picking sterile supplies in the supply room. All of my open items I put in my open box, as well as I have a couple of the bigger items on top of the cart right here. If you have more open items, you can use, a second drawer. All the hold items are down here in the hold box, and I've got some drapes over here underneath these open boxes. Let's go grab that instrument tray.
I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. That gives you a good idea of how they pick their case cart. It might be something similar to your facility. Their case carts are completely open. A lot of them are closed, like in the video right before this. So you got to see two different sterile processing departments back to back, and they are slightly different, but you still saw some of the same common themes. They're organized. They are labeled, according to their preference, and it's with their pick sheet, you can see the numbers and find those items. They don't use the barcode to scan every item out. I'm guessing the circulator will mark on that pick sheet what was opened, what was used in the operating room, and then it gets charged that way. So some facilities still do it that way. So hopefully that helps you seeing those two back to back, and just to give you an idea of what you might see. It's not going to be exact everywhere you go. Everybody's different. So there we go. We don't need to see them ride the case cart. So this is our unit 7 and 8, technically, conclusion for our discussions, because next week there is no unit 8 discussion, just because it's a short week. You only have that that discussion board that's due on Tuesday. So don't forget about that. Get everything in. I'll be wrapping up the grading as well. So if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out throughout the week as you're wrapping things up. If you have questions, please reach out to me. So good luck on your next step in your education here at Herzing, or if you're done, congratulations. Bye.